Now, I'll tell you one my dad told me on them. As they got older, Grandma and Grandpa, they couldn't get out of the house much. So Dad put them on this group called Meals on Wheels, which is a wonderful organization that serves meals to senior citizens and the homebound. Well, as Grandma got older, she started visiting people on other planets we didn't know existed. And one day their Meals on Wheels lunches was late. And my grandmother got so mad, she called 911 to complain. Wouldn't you have loved to have heard that phone conversation? 911, what's your emergency? Well, we're about to damn starve to death. That's what the damn emergency is. Ma'am, is there anybody dead there? There's going to be 2 dead people if we don't get some sandwiches real quick. Well, my father told me this story. Well, y'all, I'm a comedian. You cannot hand me a loaded gun like that and not think it's not going to go off at some point. Well, my grandparents passed away about 15 years ago. Well, one morning, a couple of years back, I got up and I called my house. Well, remember, that's one little small town in Texas. And my mom answered the phone. And she goes, hello? And I said, Mrs. Engvall? She said, yes. I said, this is Sergeant Johnson with the Georgetown Police Department. She said, oh, my God, is everything all right? And I said, oh, yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Everything is fine. I said, listen, we're just clearing out our books for the end of the year. And we noticed that we had to send emergency vehicles out to your mother-in-law's house because she called 911 about their Meals on Wheels lunches being late. And my mother goes, you need to speak to my husband. I mean, she threw him right under the bus. There was no, we're sorry, we'll make it okay. It's his mama, deal with him. And I said, well, is he home? And she said, well, yes, officer, he is, but he's in the shower. And I said, well, ma'am, if you could get him, that'd be great. And she goes, well, all right. And she sets the phone down. Well, when folks set the phone down, you can still hear the conversation. And I hear my mother go, Bill, it's the police. They want to talk to you about your mother. And I hear my father yell from the shower, my mother's dead. And my sweet little mother, who never raised her voice, went, I know that, get on the phone. Well, now I'm about to wet my pants because I have a visual of my father dripping wet, holding the towel, going, why the damn police called my house on Saturday morning about my mother's been dead for 15 years. But my friends, he got on that phone and he was nice as pie. He goes, hello? And I'm trying to keep it together. And I said, Mr. Engvall? He said, yes. I said, this is Sergeant Johnson with the Georgetown Police Department. He goes, well, how are you today, officer? I said, well, I'm doing fine. Thank you for asking. He said, what can I do for you today? I said, well, sir, I hate to bother you and your family on this beautiful Saturday. I said, but we're just clearing out our books for the end of the year, and we noticed we had to send emergency vehicles out to your mother's house because she called 911 about their Meals on Wheels lunches being late. And he goes, officer, that woman was crazy. This is Mom he's talking about. And I said, well, sir, that may well be, but that's not our department. I said, listen, we just got the issue of a little bit of a fine, and then we'll get out of your hair. He said, well, what's the fine for? And I said, well, sir, we had to send a fire truck and an ambulance out there because we thought something was wrong. He said, oh, yeah, I get that. He said, how much is the fine? I said, well, that depends. He said, on what? And I said, sir, do you remember what they had for lunch that day? And there was a pause. So I figure he's on to me. He's going to go, Bill, shut up. And he goes, I'm sorry? I said, well, whatever they had for lunch that day will determine on how big or little the fine is. And he said, well, I've never heard of that. And I said, well, it's something new we're trying. He said, well, how does it work? And I said, well, funny you should ask. I said, all right, sir, let's say they had a bowl of soup for lunch. Well, that fine's only like $10. But if they had like a meatloaf sandwich, sir, you ever done this? Your wife cooks you meatloaf on a Monday night. Well, then that next day you cut you a cold slab of meatloaf with mustard, mayonnaise, pickles, lettuce, onions. He goes, oh, I love them sandwiches. I said, well, that's going to be a little more money. Can you understand that? And he goes, yeah, that makes sense. Really? And this is an educated man. He's not some rube from the sticks. So I said, so if you could think what they had for lunch that day, we'll get this whole mess cleared up and you can go on with your weekend. He goes, boy, I'm just trying to think, officer. He goes, I don't remember what they had for lunch that day. I said, well, maybe your wife knows. And he goes, hey, good idea. He goes, hey, Mary, what'd they have for lunch that day? She goes, hell, I don't know. That was 15 years ago. He said, officer, we can't remember what they had for lunch that day. That was just too far back. I said, boy, we really want to get this cleared up, sir. I said, just think really hard. I mean, did they have a salad? Because, well, then that's only like $15. But if they had like a turkey sandwich. Now, sir, you ever done this? Your wife cooks you Thanksgiving dinner. Well, then that next day he takes some of that turkey with some dressing and cranberry sauce. He goes, oh, hell, that's my favorite sandwich of all. I said, well, that's going to be a hell of a lot more money. He goes, I bet it is. And I'm not even disguising my voice. This is his only son speaking to him. So I said, so just, sir, think really hard, man. What was it they had for lunch that day? And we'll get this whole thing cleared up and you can go on with your weekend. He goes, officer, he goes, look, I'm going to tell you right now. He goes, I can't remember what they had for lunch that day. That's just too far back. He goes, let me do this. He said, why don't I pay the larger the amounts of fine and that'll cover everything. And I said, sir, I wish we had more folks like you in the world. But you can see how that screw up our books, right? And he goes, oh, hell yeah, I guess it would, wouldn't it? Yeah. I finally went, Dad, it's me. And he went, go to hell. After we got eliminated and the show was over, my knee was just shot. I went to my orthopedic guy and he said, I don't even know how you're standing. He said, there's nothing holding your knee together. And I said, well, what are we going to do? And he goes, well, we can inject it with this gel every 6 months, but that's not going to fix it. And I said, well, what's going to fix it? He said, you need a total knee replacement. So December 15th, I had a total knee replacement. Have you had one? Yeah. They're not fun. Obviously, everything went great because I'm standing in front of you right now. But so I wake up in my hospital room, and my leg's in this machine, and it's moving around, but something's weird. You ever had that feeling when you know something's off, but you can't figure out what it is? And I'm flipping around in bed, and Gail goes, what's wrong with you? I go, I don't know. Something's weird. And I flip this way, and something hits the inside of my thigh, and I went, oh, my God. I have a catheter. I've never had a catheter before. And they hurt. And I said, do I have a catheter in? She goes, yeah. And I said, why? And she goes, well, Bill, you're under sedation. They don't want you to pee in the bed. And I said, well, how long do I have to have this? She goes, they're coming to take it out today. And as if on cue, the door opens, and in walks this 24-year-old brown-haired lady nurse named Christy. And Christy walks in, and she goes, hi, Mr. Engvall, big fan. Not now. And she goes, I'm going to be the one removing your catheter. Oh, God. And I thought dancing with a 24-year-old was awkward. And then she goes, I have to tell you this. She goes, I've never actually done this before. What? Well, go practice on a dead guy. She goes, I understand it just feels like a little bit of pressure. And I'm thinking, oh, God, that's what the prostate guy said. So, she walks over to the bed, pulls the sheet down, lifts up my gown, looks down. Now, here, let me tell you this. I'm on every drug known to man right now. So I'm not real sure how I'm representing myself at this point in time. She looks under my gown, looks at me, and says, do you have pets? What? She said, pets. Do you have pets? I went, yeah? And she goes, me too. She goes, what kind of pets do you have? And I went, I got a dog. And she goes, I love dogs. She goes, what kind of dog do you have? And I said, is there claw marks? Is there something I don't know about? Why are you? And I looked at Gail and I said, what is she doing? And she goes, honey, she's just trying to relax you. I said, well, I'm not relaxed. When a 24-year-old girl's looking at my junk, I don't want to talk about my Australian Shepherd. And by the way, if you're a nurse and this is your practice, that's not relaxing. If you want to relax me, lift up my gown, look under it, and then look at me and go, whoa. Now I'm relaxed. So she starts pulling this tube. Yeah. And apparently it was touching the back of my skull because she pulled for what seemed like an hour. And then I heard, and she goes, all done. I'm like, oh, God. Could this get any worse? She starts to leave and she turns. She goes, oh, one more thing. I said, what? She goes, I can't discharge you until you have a bowel movement. It just got